poet and sociologist. Her work includes Daughters Are Diamonds, Honor, Shame and Seclusion, a South African perspective and memoirs for Kimya. Is that correct? In her book, Sophia, she tackles the issue of abuse, which has been written and told in many different ways across the world. Sophia featured at the time of the Writer 2013 at the Wordfest at the National Arts Festival in Grahamstown, and will also feature this week at this year's Jozi Book Fair. Now, in the studio, we're joined by Shafinaaz Hassim to discuss her book, Sophia. Good morning to you.
Oh, good morning, Elvis. Lovely to be on your show.
Oh, wonderful. First and foremost, tell us about the book, Sophia.
Well, as I said to you, it's running the theme of domestic violence, which is very relevant in South Africa, especially at the moment. And it's my first attempt at a novel because I really felt that I needed to stretch and reach out to a bigger audience. My primary work is in gender biography as a social scientist. So it's been an interesting journey of debate.
Yeah. What inspired you, though?
I think I realized the urgency to write up the narrative of domestic violence. The need to engage debate and dialogue around it. So it's about presenting these stories of the women who's experiencing the violence and how it impacts on her children in order to establish what it is about violence, or domestic violence in particular, that makes women keep going back. This is one of the big questions that keeps coming up. What makes a woman go back time and again? And really, she becomes part of her own problem in some of these cases, and this is what Sophia seeks to do. To set up this in a multidimensional way. To give answers to these questions that we pose? Well, to present an urgency to bring up questions that bring answers from within ourselves. So I'm not being prescriptive about answers and solutions. I'm saying this is the situation. Use a mirror, reflect in it and see where the problem is and what we can do to resolve them. Who was it written for, though? For men or for women only? I'm discovering more and more that this book was written for whoever is meant to have it in their hands. And so I've had wonderful feedback both from women who've read the book as well as from men who say either they can identify with some of the text quite honestly, or that their frustrations that refer back and forth. There's Zareen and her husband who are in an abusive marriage, but then there's the foil of her brother and his wife who experience similar frustrations, but they don't resolve to actual violence, to physical violence. So a lot of this comes to the fore in the book, in the narrative, but especially what happens to the children. We often take for granted what happens to children in a situation and the kind of trauma that exists within a house and within the safe space of a home. And this comes to the fore, and I hope to engage consciousness around what violence and trauma does to children and bringing up children. Are we talking about love-hate relations here? I think love-hate relationships are, by their very nature, love-hate relationships. But you don't go into a marriage thinking that it's going to be an abusive space. Yes. With the best of intentions, you marry for love and for all sorts of good reasons. But at some point, so it's difficult to call something an abusive relationship, but rather to say that abuse occurs within a relationship. And why does it occur? And how do we, intervene? And how do we form these interventions as a society, as a community, as individuals? We have that power to get involved and a responsibility in some way to get involved and make a difference. And when you talk about abuse, it's not just physical abuse you're talking about. Well, abuse comes through in so many ways. The majority of cases recorded are male on female violence, but it's, we have to establish that there is female on male violence as well. Abuse is emotional, financial as well. And as soon as you start to unpack all these various forms of abuse and violence within society, you start to look for ways in which we can change the tide and shift consciousness around how we construe violence and how we can actually create these shifts and make a difference. Now, what can people, book readers, book lovers, bookworms, learn from the character and experience of in the book, Sophia? Well, Sophia itself is not a character. It's part of the process of revelation that Zareen undertakes as the woman experiencing violence. It also shows that she in some ways becomes part of her own problem because she feels that she's protecting her parents by not saying anything. She's holding on to a happy marriage. She's protecting her children. So all of these excuses come to the fore. But it's also very much linked to her own sense of self, her self-worth, that she's making this relationship work and it makes her successful in some way. And also, you know, she slowly realizes what this is doing to the children because she sees how they respond to her. A little boy is, you know, involved in his handheld games, and he comes up to her, 6 years old, and he says, "Don't worry, mommy, daddy's," you know, he just gets angry sometimes, but he'll be okay. Or her little girl who refuses to eat the food that she cooks because she thinks mommy's being bad and so she needs to be punished. And so these are very powerful parts of the narrative that tell you how children make sense of this, how children want everything to be perfect. This is the mom that they love and the dad that they love, and things just have to be fine, and they're just behaving badly right now. So these are the parts of the narrative that bring up the debates when I get into, you know, sort of launches and book discussions about what people have read. To ignite the urgency, like I said, to communicate around what different people experience from this. And how the excusing of violent behavior is a big part of our society and a big problem in our society.
Now, Sophia, the book, the novel, featured at the Time of the Writer 2013, and of course at the Wordfest at the National Arts Festival in Grahamstown, and it will feature this year at the Jozi Book Fair.
I'm very excited about the Jozi Book Fair.
Tell us more.
I think it's fantastic what's happening with the Jozi Book Fair because Kanya College and the director of the Jozi Book Fair started something in 2009 as the first fair. And what they've established all these years later is a very powerful network and platform for talking about very serious issues, for engaging literacy. They've got a fantastic schools program on Friday morning. We're doing a blogging workshop for close to 300 students. They've got a whole number of both book corporates and small publishers and creatives and writers coming together, and a way to network with readers and writers in a way that says, look, this is what the stories we want to write. These are the stories we want to read about. I have a story, how do I write it? These are the questions that come to the fore when people approach you. How do I publish? We're going to be talking about the options of publishing, self-publishing. In South Africa, it's fantastic because you don't necessarily need an agent. You can actually send your manuscript across to publishers. They're very amenable to taking submissions within certain conditions and requirements. And I think we're a thriving community of readers and writers, and we just need to engage that, and the Jozi Book Fair is definitely in the forefront doing that.
When is it happening and where?
Well, it's starting on Friday morning at the Museum Africa. It goes on until Saturday afternoon. So that's the 25th and the 26th of October. And we look forward to meeting readers and book lovers.
Well, there you have it. Sophia, thank you so much for joining us in studio.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, if you're a book lover, that's the place to be at the place again, Museum Africa, this weekend coming up, so be there.